All right, friends. So we are back for another DeFi Weekly with Summer. And I think starting next week, it won't be just me. It will be more people again. So that's cool. So in search of catalyst. So pretty light this week. Nothing much has changed. So still, let's go through. So what we're going to go over, as usual, going to go over prices, going to go over on-chain metrics, going to go over the market structure, going to go over market narratives, which this week it's just going to share like a report from Lynn Alden that was pretty good, and also going to share the podcast that our CEO Chris did with DeFi Dad, which is also pretty good. And then just going to talk about the state of DeFi, what yields are doing, what borrow rates are doing, any new if there are any new things in DeFi, something we're going long on, like in a non-formal way, just as like a what's cool, and something short, like what's maybe not so cool, and a gift and an ask, which is basically something that we do where we share something and at the same time ask something of anybody who might be listening to this. So first, state of the market, blue chip prices. So basically, we've kind of seen a little bit of more sideways action, but BTC sort of hit just above all-time highs. Which is pretty amazing actually. But it doesn't really feel that way, that it's like we're pushing all time highs, at least not to me. Um, ETH has continued to underperform. BTC obviously, but also kind of the broader market as well. It's really feels like a tale of two markets where we have kind of BTC and everything else pretty much. So yeah, that's fairly interesting. And of course, Sol is definitely performing better than ETH, but still not getting anywhere near its sort of previous cycles all-time highs. Although it's considerably up from the lows of, I think it was $8 and around FTX, and around only 20 or something dollars or so relatively recently, like uh, within a year, I believe. We'll have to double check on that if that's true, but it's well off the lows. And then of course ETH BTC um, have been uh, yeah, not great. So, but there's a little bit of surprise later when it comes to ETH BTC. It's been down, pretty much down only. So yeah, interesting. Now, things that are really making sharp moves in the market on a 7-day basis. The big gainers, I'm. It's interesting. Like, it's always fun to know like if there's something here that you actually know, because a lot of these tend to be meme coins and stuff like that. But one that's up there is Instadap. So um, Instadap making a large move over the last week, which is fairly fascinating. I'm not sure why that is, so perhaps that's worth looking into. Um, Big losers this week. Again, everything here is pretty meme coiny, more or less, except for maybe Safe, which took a huge nosedive over the last week. So again, maybe something to look into if you got the airdrop, or maybe there was an unlock or something, or maybe something to look into. Now, my personal favorite part of the sort of state of the market is the on-chain metrics, specifically the MVRV, so market value to realized value, which kind of just gives you a general view of like how toppy is the market or how underpriced is the market. And it's pretty clear that we're not. I mean, there's no like crystal ball or anything like that. But if we use this as a decent approximation, like we're definitely not overheated in this market. Um, so that's great. Um, maybe a place to be allocating, maybe a place to be accumulating more BTC or something else. Because we're definitely not overheated in that regard, in the grand scheme of things. So when it comes to ETF flows, it was another pretty good week for Bitcoin. If we take a look here, the flows continue to come in. Like, I think, wow, this is incredible. Like, we got the first flows way back in the beginning of the year, I believe. So yeah, that's right. And now, we are, so this is cumulative all the way from back beginning of the year. And now let's look at the flows from weekly from the beginning of the year. So we're not back where we used to be in the beginning of 2024, but we're starting to get there. I mean, it's pretty clear that, these last couple of weeks have been starting to really trend in the right direction. So, I think if we talk about that notion of a tale of two markets, BTC and everything else, I think this starts to indicate like perhaps why that is, we're starting to see significant inflows into the BTC into ETF once again. Now, we can't say the same for ETH. ETH has been, tale of two markets. We've continuously been underperforming in terms of ETH, and continuously been had a lack of inflows when it comes to the ETFs providers. So yeah, I'm not sure that's something to necessarily be worried about per se, because I think the ETFs are really more going to be Bitcoin dominant at first. But as I said before, like I think last week, I don't think that negates any type of wealth effect that will happen and that we've seen happen with BTC relative to ETH over the cycles over the years. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Now, when it comes to the funding landscape, we're not cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but we're definitely not overheated. So this is a heat map of funding for all of the major assets in crypto, BTC and ETH being at the top of, obviously the deepest, most liquid markets. And we don't see it getting overheated really. But it's not depressed as well in terms of pricing. So, maybe the market is not super over leveraged, or it's not paying at least to be super over leveraged, exorbitant amounts, but at the same time, it's not sort of, the market is not the opposite where it might be a screaming time to borrow against your BTC or ETH or whatever it may be. Now, moving on to market narratives. This is, I guess it somewhat seems self-serving, but it's actually a great podcast to listen to, which is the CEO of Summer on the DeFi Dad, or I believe, sorry, the Edge podcast, which is with DeFi Dad. And the podcast is really worth listening to, especially if you've been in DeFi for a while, or if you use any of these DeFi apps, because it goes over two really key things. So first is when and how to use Summer, which we have extensive stuff on this YouTube channel about that, but this is just like a compact way, in less than, I'd say, 10 or 15 minutes within the interview, talking about how to use Summer in a bull market, how to use Summer in a bear market, how to use Summer in a sideways moving market, and all the different products that we have for that. And then another thing in here is something that, if you look at 44 minutes and 44 seconds on the left hand side here, you should read for yourself. and it's discussed in the podcast, the protocol that we're working on right now, and what it seeks to do. And you should definitely listen to that and get prepared for the launch of that. Now, next is Lynn Alden's actually 4 macro catalysts to watch. So I have been continuously impressed been continuously impressed with Lynn Alton's sort of analysis of markets over the last, wow, at least 4 years now. I think she really came to prominence around just before COVID, so 2019, and around COVID for sure, with her quite prescient call of buying BTC in a confident way around that time. So, she talks about in this post 4 things to look forward to in 2025 and their sort of implications for markets. The first one is of course, the election, and she kind of makes the argument that the path or the destination is the same regardless of the person that is chosen or selected or elected, which is interesting in and of itself. And she sort of talks about how the the president is somewhat an overstated thing within markets. And she also talks about the debt ceiling that is happening in, I believe, January, and how that could be potentially bullish, as if there's a standoff for the debt ceiling, the raising of the debt ceiling within the U.S. government, that the the Treasury will have to start to bring down their Treasury General account, which is basically like the bank account of the Treasury, and that liquidity will have to find its way somewhere and ultimately boosting financial markets. She also touches on expiring tax cuts. So that's the tax cuts put into place by the Trump administration in 2017 are coming to expire early in 2025. And yeah, so depending on who the elected president is, we'll have to see how that either impacts lower income parts of the economy or higher income parts of the economy, and of course its net effects on markets and such. So number one and number three are pretty sort of political in their nature and obviously remain to be seen depending on the outcome. But the second and fourth are more neutral and sort of objective in a way. So bank lending and credit has been tight over the past 2 years, obviously with rising rates and the approach of monetary policy to be more tight generally, and to have financial conditions be more tight. It is expected for bank lending and credit to basically credit standards to be loosened going into 2025, with a similar sort of fiscal stance, which should just have a net effect of being more bullish for the economy, more bullish for financial assets as well. So yeah, the link is, or the number, or the title is October 2024 for macro catalysts. What I just went through is a pretty brief overview, but it's very much worth going through and reading yourself. Should you have that? Should you? Now, state of DeFi. So, what is DeFi doing right now? What are yields like? What can we come to expect when it comes to specifically stablecoin yields right now? And no real change. So we see that SUSDE is still probably the best yield that you can get in DeFi at the moment on a somewhat risk-adjusted basis. And especially if you're looking to get yields in size, that's definitely true. And then, the DSR or USDS rate of 6.25% is probably the second best that you can get in DeFi right now. So that's pretty great if you're holding on to stable coins, and it's likely that is probably the same for ETH. So let's see here in terms of the staking rate. So if you're holding on to ETH, what can you kind of expect? what can you expect to get? And yeah, the staking rate is kind of the base rate right now, so just under 3%, which is something I'll touch on it right now because it's just so insane to me that you can basically double this staking rate by doing a pretty straightforward strategy, which is the yield loop strategy on either Morpho or Aave or Spark. I personally like Spark. I think there's this, it's deeply liquid. It's very straightforward. You get SBK rewards, and yeah, you're gonna get 9.35%. So that's more than 3 times the staking rate, but by doing this strategy, which to me is insane. I'm gonna talk about it every single week until it's no longer the case. So yeah, that's basically what's going on in terms of yields. Now, in terms of borrow rate in DeFi, we are still around kind of that 5% mark for borrowing in DeFi against the majors. Mainly ETH, because that's the main thing that people borrow against in DeFi, but you can expect to pay around 5% for borrowing in DeFi today, which is not too rich in my estimation. And if you want to get some liquidity, or if you want to go long the underlying ETH, I think that's a reasonable price to pay in my estimation. Now, what's new in DeFi? Well, there's nothing new in DeFi, which is maybe a bit sad. But week over week, there's nothing really anything new that I saw in DeFi this week, other than maybe that Morpho's token is really looks like the strides are being taken to make it transferable and have a mark to market price and a liquid trading token. But I'm not sure that's really worthy of like a new thing in DeFi. So it's good to know, but yeah, definitely not something innovative or new. Now, what would I be long and what would I be short? So this is a sort of segment that we do. And if we go back for a second to the ETH BTC ratio, and we also think about the ETFs and how there's major flows into BTC, but not major flows into ETH. To me, this feels like quite drawn out, feels pretty consensus. I think maybe over the next couple of weeks, depending on what happens with the election and all of this different stuff, we'll see more flows into BTC. But I think ETH is going to start to outperform and start performing well. So you can mark the day, you can mark my words and make fun of me if I'm wrong, or pat me on the back if I'm right. But that's my call right now. Now, lastly is a gift and an ask. So usually they're different, but you'll see today that they're the same. And this amount, I had some stable coins in my wallet, and I was thinking of, what could I do with these stable coins? And the thing that I came across was the USD yield loop. And to me, that is just like, it's crazy to me that you can still earn so much on stablecoins. We're doing, again, a relatively straightforward strategy. So with SUSD today, if you look at some of these, like returns that you can get on, SUSDE from doing these yield loop strategies, it's really crazy. 25%, 23%, almost 30%. 20%. These are, incredible strategies that, like a 20% return on an asset is pretty awesome, especially as we're maybe going into this period of a little bit of uncertainty with the election and stuff. I think that's just awesome. So both, to me, that's a gift and an ask, because it's asked to check it out. But in some sense, I think even having a strategy like this is a bit of a gift, and it seems to be a little bit hidden from the market today. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening to DeFi Weekly number 4. Hopefully it was useful for you, and this will also be written in written form from now on as well. So if you want to subscribe to our newsletter in addition to our YouTube channel, then be sure to do that.